Is that zoomed in enough for the two of you?
Sure, I can see it.
Great. So let's just real quick, um, we'll alternate between Dr. Strain and Curtis, and the two of you can say what's the letter that you see.
I thought it was a Saudi.
It is Atsadi. Great.
Yeah.
All right, and Curtis?
Aleph.
Nice. All right. Oops. You know what? I think this is in order. So, I'm gonna shuffle it.
Okay, that's a bet.
It was a bet. What is this one now?
Is it
What
me?
would you like to answer?
Curtis.
Oh, it's a vet.
This one is not a vet.
Oh, it's
It's
not
a
a vet?
noon.
Yeah, it would be a noon. I'm sorry. I thought it was a vet. I mean, a
There
vet
you
with,
go.
yeah,
So do you know what the difference is between a vet and a nun?
A length.
yeah, the length. The noon's a bit longer.
Well,
No.
not just a bit longer, but if we, here we go. If I draw a bet, I draw a nun. Now, Curtis, what do you see as the difference?
Okay, the arms are shorter. Well, I'm calling them arms.
Yeah, well, the bottom, right? The vet has, we always say bet has a base, but so does vet. Vet has a base as well.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Dr. Strain.
Okay, this is the ones that gets me. This is a cough. It's
It
one
is a
K
cough.
one.
Nice.
It's like
That
those four core. It's like those four Ks that just get me.
exactly
That is a hay.
is a hay.
Mhm.
That is a pay.
Is a pay. All right, this one we have not learned yet.
Uh,
Yeah, we haven't
is
learned
that
that
a
one.
It's a soft something.
It is, and we'll get to it today if I can find that PowerPoint.
okay? That's a chaf.
Great.
That's a lamed.
Nice.
Hmm. Kuf.
Great.
That's an alf.
There we
Alf.
go. An aleph.
Aleph.
That would be. Is that a? That's a Zion.
That is a Zion. Yeah.
That's a mem.
Nice. And I'm just pulling up. I found the PowerPoint. So great. Great. That is a final memsophytes. Great.
That would be a bet.
Great.
Is that a tav?
It is not a tav, but it does make the same sound as a tav.
It's a
Um,
T. It's a tet.
it is a tet. Nice.
Okay.
Nice. All right.
Oh, that is that a chet?
That is a chet. Nice.
Is that a dalet?
It is a dalid.
Okay.
That is a shin.
Mm-hmm.
That is a sin.
Mm-hmm.
Gimel.
Great. And then
That's a yud. and the one before that was a va.
So it looks like a Vav, but it's actually longer than a Vav. So it's a Sofit letter. Do you remember which
Noon
one?
Sophie?
There you go.
The new
Nice.
Jaffe, yeah.
Great. We might not even have to do the class today. Uh, all right. Here, let's see. Now this one for Curtis.
I think we're gonna have to do that class after all. Isn't that a hit?
That is not a chet, because this one has a tail or a toe.
Right, it's a tav.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So if you look at it,
It's because of that tail.
exactly. So this one is a chet on top.
Right.
The difference between a chet and a taf is the taf has a toe.
Has a toe.
Tail.
Is there any way you can make it a little bigger?
Yeah, let me try to the stuff that I'm typing, or the screen itself.
The screen itself.
Okay, let's see if I can. There we go. Is that any better?
That helps a lot. Yeah.
Great. Great. Oops, except. Go, and that's a Sofit letter, but let's.
That's that's the feet letter, if I'm not mistaken, might have been a fe.
It was a Fey, nice.
And this, yeah, that's a say. And the other one is a Shemet, S-E, Shemat,
Kind of.
Shemed. It's a summit. Summit,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
So
summit.
it has a s sound, like
Yeah,
snake.
Summit, right, summit.
Great. I don't know who we're on now, but let's hear Curtis.
Okay, so Faye.
That's that's a mem.
Great. Okay, Curtis.
Vav.
That's a resh.
Great.
That would be a Sadi.
Almost. Almost.
If
Is
it's
that
not
an ayan?
that's an iron.
That's an
Ayin.
ayin.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I know there are a lot of letters. The nice thing, maybe not nice, but but I like to put a positive spin on things. The nice thing, Curtis, is that the letters that you're mixing up are all the ones that look similar to each other. Right. So we have an ayin. This is an ayin that I just typed. And this one's the tzadi.
Okay.
So for me, actually in this version is kind of a pain because it doesn't actually, it's not actually all that helpful, the difference. But usually in a tzadi, you've got a little acute angle here. Two acute angles. And in an ayin, you've got kind of the outside one is going to be a more, if you look at the outside, it's more of an obtuse angle. But some of it is just getting used to it. I kind of also see the ayin as a little bit wider profile than the tzadi. But again, that's something just to get used to. All right, cool. So now, and you guys know that and have known that for quite a while. Always good to practice. So we're going to go on to Sofit letters, which both of you already know. And welcome, Kayla. I'm glad you're here.
Hello, I'm glad too.
All right. So what to know about Sofit letters? We talked about this in the first class, and a couple of you at least have learned this already. But final or Sofit letters only appear at the end of words. So the letters that we're about to learn, you're never going to see them in the middle of a word. They're always going to be at the end of a word. So if you think something is a nun sofit and it's right in the middle of the word, it's not a nun sofit. Right? It's got to be at the end. And final letters, sofit letters only exist for these letters we have here. And so, Kayla, do you know what each of these letters are from right to left? I'll circle the ones I'm talking about here.
Let me see. This one and half,
Great.
right?
Exactly.
Okay. Ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
No, right?
Exactly.
Faye
Yep.
and Tisad.
Sadi. Yeah, exactly.
Tisadi. Yes, yes.
Great. So now
I'm trying.
you're doing great, and now you get to help your husband with what Sadi looks like as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So those final letters are only going to exist for those 5 letters, right? Anytime another letter shows up at the end of a word, it'll just show up in its normal form. So now, every time these 5 letters show up at the end of the word, they are present in the sofit form. So you will never see a nun that looks like this at the end of a word. You will never see a chaf that looks like this at the end of the word. They're always going to look like their final form. The other thing to know about sofit letters is that they sound the same as their basic form. So questions about the general nature of sofit letters? Great. Right, so we are going to learn some of these final letters, these sofit letters. This is a chaf sofit. So if you have a notebook or you have index cards, this is a great time to draw. And I would recommend doing 5 of these. It looks like a really long daled, which is quite annoying because it gets confusing. So the top line is going to look like that. The bottom line is going to go under. So let me get my little... Oh, good. Eddie and Kayla are here. Okay. All right. Since they just got here, I think I'm going to really quickly go over the rules that we just said because I think they're really important. Although I don't see them yet. Are they here? Hold on one second. Right. There we go. Hello, Eddie and Kayla. So we just did a slide a minute ago, but I want to go back to this slide because I know that the two of you have not done a whole lot of, or I don't know if it's just you, Eddie today, but I know you haven't done a whole lot of Hebrew learning before, so I want to drill this in because it's important. We're learning about sofit, or final letters, today. So final letters, or sofit letters, only appear at the end of words. These letters that we're learning today are only going to appear at the end of a word. You're never going to see it in the middle of a word. They only exist for these following 5 letters, for chaf, mem, nun, fe, and sadi. Every time these 5 letters show up at the end of the word, they're present in sofit form. So you're never going to see a sadi that looks like, let's say it looks like this at the end of a word. You're never going to see a mem that looks like this at the end of a word. And what I've realized that I need to do that might be helpful for y'all would be to actually send out these PowerPoints that I've made, because I think that might be helpful to have those resources. And finally, each Sofit letter sounds the same as its basic form. So each Sofit, a final tsari, a tsari Sofit, is going to sound the same as a normal tsari. Same thing with a fei Sofit. It's going to sound the same as a normal fei. Right. One other thing that I didn't mention on here that we'll learn with each letter is that these two, the chaf and the fei, I know that they come in forms that are dotted, that have a dagesh in the middle, and they come in forms that are not dotted, that don't have a dagesh in the middle. 99.9% of the time, when you see them at the end of the word, they're going to be without a dot in the middle. So it's always going to sound like or f, right? It's the Sofit, in Sofit form, a word is not going to end with the sound p, and it's not going to end with, unless it's a kuf, it's not going to end with the sound k. All right, so it might end with the sound k if there's a kuf at the end, but it won't have a kaf at the end. Right? It'll have a ch sound or a f sound. All right, so new letters to start writing down. This is chaf Sofit. I was just teaching chaf Sofit. So one of the things about most Sofit letters, not all of them, mem is an exception, but we'll get there, is that they take up a lot of space. So if I have lines like this, my chaf Sofit is going to look like a really long dalet. So you'll write that top line and then come down below the line. It's a chaf Sofit. So like we did before, I'd recommend writing it 5 times. That's the top line and then the line down the bottom. All right. Something to know about chaf Sofit is that chaf Sofit will always take a vowel, and no other Sofit letters will take a vowel. We have not learned vowels yet, but it's important to know that when you see a chaf Sofit, it's never going to just look like this long dalet here. It's always going to have a vowel in it, and usually the vowels are these two. Right. This vowel, we'll learn next week, this vowel makes the sound, and this vowel is, for all intents and purposes, silent, but we'll get to it. This is a tricky vowel. So when a word ends with this one, it'll sound like cha, and when a word ends with this one, it'll end with just the sound right? So we'll learn vowels next week, but good to know that you're never going to see it without a vowel in it. It'll always have a vowel in it when it's written. All right, mem Sofit. Here is our exception to the rule that I just said 5 seconds ago, or to the tendency. So if these are our lines, the mem is a box. Sometimes people will call it marshmallow mem. So line 1 is going to be this top, line 2 is going to be the side, 3 is here, or should be longer than that, and 4 is up. It does look like a samech, but the difference is that usually it's boxier than a samech. Oops. Great. So I would draw a few of those. Okay. The next one is a nun Sofit. And that looks like a very long vav. So if these are our lines, a nun Sofit, line number 1 is going to be this little top one. Line number 2 is going to be a very long line. Doesn't have to be that far down, but just something below the line so that you know the difference between that and a vav. There we go. So that is our Nun Sofit. All right. Next one is Fey Sofit, and the lovely thing about a Fey Sofit is that it actually kind of looks like a Fey. What a concept. It actually looks like the letter it's supposed to look like. Similar to drawing a Fey, line number 1 is this little one here. Line number 2 is another little one here. 3 is the top. 4 goes all the way down. And those are all supposed to be straight lines that I just drew. We can pretend that they are. There we go. That's straighter, sort of. All right. Now we've got our Tsadi Sofit. And the wonderful thing for those of us who have issues with Tsadi is that one of the ways we can remember which one is Tsadi is because this kind of looks like the top of a Tsadi. So once you're used to seeing Tsadi Sofit, then it gets you more familiar with seeing the letter Tsadi. So you might have heard a Tsadi Sofit in the word Aretz or Eretz. So Tsadi Sofit is not so difficult to draw. We're gonna draw our lines again. You'll draw a big line down and then a little line there. So it looks like a Y.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Questions before we review those letters?
So basically what you're saying is that except for Mem Sofit, all of them have a tail that goes below the line.
Exactly. Exactly. So they're pretty easy to identify, except for the Mem Sofit. But once you look for that marshmallow mem, it shouldn't be so difficult. All right. Now I'd love to ask Eddie. Are you up for answering questions today?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So what is the name of this letter?
It's Fey Sofit.
Beautiful. And can you draw the base form of this letter? Beautiful. So that's the Sofit form. That was a beautiful Fey Sofit. Can you draw what it would look like if it was in the middle of a word?
I can't remember how.
Aha. Okay. Let's see. Kayla, could you draw how it might look like in the middle of a word?
She's out sick right now. Sorry.
Okay. There's another Kayla here. But refuah shlema, I hope she feels better. Right. So, if we were to draw this letter, how it would appear in the middle of a word, it would look like that. If we were to type it out, look like that. So this is a Fey or Fey-Sophite. All right. How about Kayla? What letter is this?
Mem Sophit.
Beautiful. And can you draw a mem from the middle of a mem if it was in the middle of a word?
I do. I have now.
You got a mem?
You can see?
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful mem Sophite.
Uh-huh.
Anyone here, would you be able to draw a mem as it would be in the middle of a word? It wasn't at the end?
I don't think so.
It's tricky. It's trickier to draw the letter than it is to identify it when you see it on the screen. So now I got to remind myself that's something we got to work on. All right. Either Curtis or Dr. Strain, you think you could draw a mem? There we go. Nice.
Okay.
Beautiful. Oh, you have the whiteboard too. I've fallen in love with whiteboards the past couple of years. All right, the mini ones. All right. For Curtis, what is this? Oh, I didn't realize I had it backwards. What is this letter, and can you draw the Sophite form?
That's a Chaf.
Nice.
And the Sophite form, I'm going to make an attempt to draw it.
I have faith.
I don't know if you can see this. I don't know where my camera is because I cannot see.
There you go. So some people will draw it like that. What I prefer with the Sophite form is that it looks more like a Dalid. So like where you have that.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, it has a tail on the end.
Right.
Okay.
The reason why I like that is because depending on what your writing style is, your Chaf Sophite might look a little bit too much like a Nun Sophite, which gets tricky. So it just puts more of a distinction.
Okay.
All right. But you probably learned it that way, and that's a lot of people will draw it that way as well. Dr. Strain, what is this letter?
That's a nun.
Great. And can you draw a Nun Sophite? Nice. And what I would even say is to make it even more narrow so that kind of the opposite of Curtis, so that it doesn't look like a Chaf Sophite.
So I should make it more like this.
Exactly. Right. That it looks kind of like a long Vav. Great. So that's a Nun Sophite. And then, Eddie, what is this letter?
It's Sade.
Nice. And can you draw the Sophite form? That's beautiful. And just know that you don't actually need the little bits on the corners. You can have them, they're pretty, but you don't need the little bits on the corners. All right, this is one of my favorite things is Sophite Sudoku.
I have no idea.
Raise your hand if you've played Sudoku before. Okay, Eddie has. All right, that's fine. We'll figure it out. So the idea of Sudoku is that you have a bunch of numbers in boxes, and every box should have 9 numbers. Should have the numbers 1 through 9. Every row should have the numbers 1 through 9, and every column should have the numbers 1 through 9. We are going to do that with our 5 final letters, with our 5 Sofit letters. So just to go over, and now, see, we're all coming in at different times today. All right. The letters that we see here, just to review from right to left, we've got Chaf and Chaf Sofit, Mem and Mem Sofit, Nun, Nun Sofit, Fe, Fe Sofit, and Tzadi, Tzadi Sofit. Just to say again for the 10th time, you will never find the top row, any of the letters from the top row at the end of a word, and you will never find the letters on the bottom row in the middle of a word. And there are no other letters that have Sofit forms. This is it. Okay. So here are the letters that we have. All right. That is all right. So Dr. Aber, because I know you've studied Hebrew before, I'm going to put you on the spot here. From right to left, can you tell me what Sofit letters you see?
Okay, I had to find unmute. Kaf Sofit, Mem Sofit, Nun Sofit, Fe Sofit, and Sadi Sofit.
Beautiful. All right. So now I'm going to ask Dr. Strain, what Sofit letter is missing here out of the 5 Sofit letters?
It's the Kaf Sofit.
Is it Kaf, or is it another letter that sounds like Kaf?
No, it's Kaf.
Chaf. There we go. Nice. Chaf Sofit. Great. All right. Curtis, what letter is missing?
Mem Sofit.
Mem Sofit. Nice. Kayla, what letter is missing?
Face.
We have a Fe Sofit. I actually need to get this phone call, but I'm going to give you all a really hard one while I'm taking this phone call. And I would love for you together to do annotate and to try to fill this out.
On the top line, we're missing a mem. No,
The second one, we're missing Sade Sofit.
Sorry. Next one, Sadi, we have Fe, so we're missing Nun
Mem,
and
Nun,
Mem,
and
Say.
Ah.
No. And cough, is it that one missing? And in line number 3?
yeah, it would be, the 4th one, you're missing the Chaf, correct?
Correct.
The fifth
The
one,
fifth.
This one we're missing Sadi, Mem. The last one we're missing Sadi, Mem, and Fe.
Correct.
yes. Great work.
I think so.
All right. So what did we come up with? What's the letter missing on the top line?
It was a Mem.
Mem Sofit. Nice. How about the second line?
Sadi Sofit.
Great. Oops. And then how about this space? Oh, you
Mem Sofit.
Say that again?
Mem Sofit or Nun.
Nun, because it wouldn't be a mem because you've got the mem over here.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
we've been
Right,
doing it
because you
wrong
can't have
then.
the same, you can't have repeating letters from top to bottom. So,
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
what
we've
you're
been doing
saying.
it wrong.
ah,
We
All right.
didn't get that point.
No, we didn't.
Okay, so that one's missing a
someone
mem.
did. Someone said nun so feet. All
So
right,
that one's missing a mem, Sophie.
this one's missing a mem so feet.
Uh-huh.
And then how about the next one on that line?
Ha, Sophie.
Half so feet. Great. All right. How about the blank on the next line?
And we have a mem. It has to
Also a
be
ha.
a fey, Sophie. Oh no, we already have a fey.
Already have a fey.
Ha.
Yep.
Oh,
this
it's
one's
the okay. I know which letter it is.
Mhm.
It's off, Sophie.
Also a chaf so feet. Nice. And you know that. So this is Sudoku. This is Sudoku logic, right? We know that because you can't have a chaf so feet at the bottom because there's a chaf right
But
next
you can
to it.
have a mem in the middle.
You can have a mem in the middle, and that's the one that's missing. The
Yeah,
mem is
that's the
missing.
mem there.
How about on the right?
We have a
Sadi.
Sadi, and then on the
Sadi.
left?
we're missing a fey.
Faye, great. So now, hopefully, one of the hardest things about Sofit letters, and I'm so glad we have an experienced group here because we just skipped over all the easy ones. I'm so glad we have an experienced group. But one of the things that's the hardest with Sofit letters is often telling the difference between which ones are Sofit, which ones are not. But now that we know the 5 letters that have to be Sofit, or the 5 letters, sorry, I should say the only 5 letters that are Sofit, and the 5 letters that are Sofit always when they're at the end, now that we've got those 5 ingrained in our brains, it's going to make parsing out words a lot easier in context. All right. Before I go on to Hebrew fonts, any other questions about Sofit letters? All right. So this is not particularly on the curriculum, but I've gotten a lot of questions about it. How do you tell the difference between Hebrew fonts? Because we've learned how to draw Hebrew letters in different ways. We've already seen 2 different Hebrew fonts because we've seen the Zoom font and we've seen the written font that the one I've been using, I think, is Times New Roman. So different fonts in different books are going to look different. So I'll show you a few different fonts here. Right. So in the Torah, the letters look pretty fancy. Right. When a sofer, a scribe, is writing out Hebrew letters, that scribe uses a particular number of little crowns, of little lines here. Oops. What is going on? I'm not allowed to go backwards. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you'll see, for some reason I'm not allowed to draw now. Okay, now I am. You'll see that there are some crowns that will show up here. Right. And there are some letters that look very different. So can anyone guess what letter this is that I just circled?
Is that a het?
That is a chet, right? It looks really weird, but it is a chet. Okay, so some of the letters in the Torah font look a little bit different than they might look normally. So I would love for each of you to identify a letter. Dr. Aber just identified a letter. Dr. Strain, do you see a letter in there that you can identify?
I'm questioning whether the third one from the right on the first line is a gimbal.
Fantastic. And the nice thing is that this is all in alphabetical order, so if you know your alphabet, you're safe. So Curtis, how about you? What's a letter that you can identify?
Okay, in the second row, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left would be a mem.
Great. that's a mem. How about Eddie?
The second row, 8th letter from the right, it's a nun.
6, 7, 8. That is a nun. Fantastic. And Dr. Aber, you already identified a chet. How about Kayla?
Tav.
Tav, nice. And where is the tav?
Yeah. No. Yes.
So here, yeah. So that's a tav. Good. And you'll notice that there aren't any dots on these letters. In the Torah, there are no dots and no vowels. So when we read out of the Torah, two options. One, we have to be really, really, really fluent in our Hebrew to be able to read without vowels. Or two, we have to memorize what the order of all the words are. It's much easier once you know the Hebrew well, or once you get the sound of the Hebrew down when you're reading Torah. But even if you're not fluent in Hebrew, it is definitely possible to read out of the Torah. That's a little bit down the line. That's our ultimate goal in this class. All right, some other comparisons. So the top here is Siddur Sim Shalom, which is the Siddur we use over Shabbat at Agudath Achim. So you'll notice, the top and the bottom don't look so different. Oh, Machzor Lev Shalem is the prayer book we use for high holidays. These are both the Talit blessing. And these are both the Talit blessing. And I want to challenge, just because I know that all of you have different skill sets here, I want to challenge Dr. Aber using whichever font is easier for you. Could you read these? Actually, I'm not even going to ask you to read the first one here, because that's even more complicated. Could you read these last two words here?
Lehita tef or tef, but seat.
Nice. Anyone know what this blessing is for? Did I just say it? I probably just said it.
You did, yes. Talit.
Okay, never mind. So putting on the talit, the tzitzit are the fringes at the end of the talit. So this is the mitzvah blessing for putting on a talit. All right. We've done a lot of guess what letter this is. So the last thing I'd like to ask about for everybody is whether you all have thought about, is there one verse in Torah that you think you'd want to focus on, that you'd like to read out of the Torah? Or one portion you'd like to read out of?
From the Torah font?
From the Torah text itself. I know that you are not going to be present, but our final project is going to be for Simchat Torah, for those of us who are able to be here in person, to be able to read out of the Torah itself. So we're going to roll the Torah out all the way and see the entire Torah scroll, and then each of us is going to find one verse of Torah that we want to read from the scroll itself.
That's a big challenge.
And
that's right after my favorite holiday also.
There you go. So do you have a favorite verse of Torah that you'd want to practice reading?
I actually like Breshit 1:1.
Great. That's Genesis 1:1.
That's what I was gonna take.
But I can't. I can't. I'm like 8 hours drive away, so
that's okay.
I unfortunately will have to miss that.
But you will still be able to learn that verse.
Yes, ma'am.
Curtis, would you like to be Genesis 1:2?
Sure. I already know the first one, though. That's what I was.
Aha. Well, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, I know a little of that one.
Great. So now you get to learn. Now you get to learn verse 2.
I can continue to
Genesis
learn.
1, 2.
Correct.
All right. Uh, we could just go on in Genesis and have everybody read the first couple lines of Genesis. So if you want to do that, great. But if you have another verse in mind, let me know. Eddie, do you have a particular verse that you like?
I haven't picked one out yet.
Okay. So that beginning of Genesis might be a possibility that we just each read a line of Genesis, which I think would be lovely. Dr. Strain, do you have one?
Since we've already started the pattern of each of us reading a line of Genesis, we'll go ahead with that.
Great. So
I'll take line 4.
line 4. Okay.
Okay.
So that gives somebody else line 3. And I know that actually that not everybody on this, that everyone on this call either lives really far away or has a newborn, or not a newborn, but still, still a baby who's pretty young. So it might not be guaranteed that you're able to be here on Simchat Torah, but we'll keep that space open for you in case you are. So
I have a question. What day in
Sure.
October is Simchat Torah?
Great. So that is
You know I'm the traveler.
yes. So that is going to be October. So it'll be the evening of Monday night, October 17th at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Great.
Aren't we supposed to actually read a little from the beginning anyway?
Yes. Right. So that would be perfect for the holiday. Absolutely. So then, Kayla, would you like to read Genesis 1:3 right after Curtis?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so that's what we're going to do then. We're going to read the very beginning of Genesis. I love that. Unless Eddie or someone else wants to read something from the beginning of Torah, we'll start out from the beginning of Genesis. And once we start learning syllables, I'll parse out those different syllables, and or I'll parse out those different verses and send them to y'all, so that you can see what your verses are like, and we can practice with those syllables. All right. So thank you for learning with me. I know today was a little bit short, but I always like having those final letters, the Sofit letters, in their own class, because there's something a little bit different and a little bit odd. Next week we're going to learn vowels, and most likely we'll spend the whole class learning the names and the functions of each of the vowels. But possibly by the end of the class, if we've got more time, if people want to stay a little bit later, we can start learning how to put letters and vowels together. Now, I would say probably half of the people on this screen already have done that, already know how to do that. But it's a little bit of a different experience just doing a little bit at a time. And so from there, we're going to build up 1-syllable words, 2-syllable words, 3, and so on and so forth. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Okay.
I'm just curious if
Yeah.
I have 1-1, is that really a doable thing? Is that logistically, I'm thinking?
So logistically, you would not be able to read 1-1,
So
but
you would do it.
I would do it, or we could all say it together, something like that.
Okay.
But I still think that you should learn it the way that we would learn it from Torah text, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we'll learn how to read it with the vowels and the consonants. And then once we become confident with that, we'll try it without the vowels and the consonants, and because we will have each said our verse so many times that it'll be easier to read just from the letters that are on the page.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right, thank you everyone. thank you for coming. No matter what time you showed up, thank you for coming. And next week I'll send out the announcement a little bit earlier. I was all done planning early in the day, and then a half hour before 7, I realized, wait, I didn't remind people. So thank you for being here, and I will see you hopefully before next week, but definitely next